NSTV, RF supervisor, and a member of the conference committee. Hope you've enjoyed the lunch and the time with the exhibitors and time to speak with each other and reacquaint ourselves with each other. And I know a lot of times we only see each other once a year, and this is that opportunity, a great networking situation. I want to thank Telos Alliance again for the lunch. This afternoon, our breakout session here for television is entitled Next Generation News Gathering, the Advent of High-Speed Multi-User IP-ENG Solutions. Did that all fit on the screen? Presented by Jeff Cohen of Vislink. Jeff's not the name in your program, but that's who's doing the paper is Jeff Cohen. Jeff is the Newsnet Key Account Manager for IMT-Vislink. Prior to joining IMT-Vislink, he was Senior Sales Executive for TVU Networks, provider of bonded cellular and live IP distribution products to broadcasters. Previously, Jeff served as Vice President of Sales at Archimedia Technology. He was also served in sales management positions at SohoNet and Mastech Groups. Additionally, he has done work with Avid Technology, founded a joint venture between the BBC Technology and Video Corporation of America, successfully developing accounts including DirecTV, ABC, Fox, and the United Nations. Among his professional affiliations, Jeff is a voting member of the National Academy of Television Arts and Sciences Technical Emmy Awards Engineering Committee and is the current chairman of the New York section of the Society of Motion Picture and Television Engineers. We're pleased to have Jeff here today to talk about how internet today has changed the way traditional news gathering is being performed, and Vislink's alternative IP-centric technology that increases security and maximizes efficiency and spectrum usage. Welcome, Jeff Cohen.
Thank you, Marvin, for that introduction, and thank you all for joining us here today. I have a fairly short, to-the-point presentation, but that should allow us plenty of time for questions and answers and general conversation on this topic at the end. And of course, I'll be packing up the booth after this if you'd like to join me for any other chit-chat. I do have my business cards up here. If you need a copy, feel free to come forward. And also, this presentation is based on a much more complete full white paper that was presented at NAB this past year, and I created a bit.ly/Newsnet white paper download link. You might want to write that one down. You can also find this white paper, I believe, on our Vislink website if you search around, but that'll take you right to it, and it is more complete than this presentation. So if you want more detail, I would direct you toward that. There we go. So we're talking today about the BAS band. I assume most people in this room are very familiar with this topic. But what I have to say about the BAS band is that like all spectrum these days, it's somewhat under the scrutiny of the federal government. It represents a valuable asset that can be auctioned, sold, etc. It was provided to broadcasters long ago. I don't even know how long ago, but decades ago, essentially for free. You're familiar with the 12 megahertz band-sized channels. In small markets, you might have 1 or 2, even 3 channels available to you. In big markets, you might live within a half channel or a single channel, that sort of thing. But my message about this is, and in fact, there was a news piece a week or two back where the administration has now guided the FCC to look at additional bands for repack and for further auction, and the 2 gigahertz is certainly one of them. There's also been guidance from the FCC for channel sharing with the DoD, the Department of Defense, for 2 gigahertz. So my general message about 2 gigahertz broadcast ancillary services band is to exercise your BAS muscle. I know there's a big trend toward cellular news gathering, and I have nothing bad to say, nothing negative to say about cellular news gathering. I know it's what you use probably for a very high percentage of your news gathering today, and will continue to be. However, you have this BAS band available to you, and it's getting looked at. And if you have not the argument that we're using it, you might not have an argument to prevent yourselves from losing it. Notably, somewhere this similar amount of bandwidth was auctioned for, it says, $20 billion not long ago to the likes of T-Mobile and others who can make good use of this bandwidth. You may think of another use for 2 gigahertz BAS 10 years from now, and may kick yourselves and say, how did I let that slip through my fingers? It was, a couple of $1 billion worth of free gift. So, I think there's reasons beyond any of the technical aspects of news gathering to think about BAS in general. I encourage you to speak to your SBE coordinators and to your NAB partners about BAS. That's my BAS message. Okay. So basically, what we're talking about today is a different method of operating within BAS news gathering. Up until now, for many decades, it's been a one-way operation based on COFDM and DVB-T. On the left, you see we have a typical tower with a steerable antenna on it, and just next to it, a typical ENG van with a raisable mast with a directional or directable antenna on it. And, you're familiar with how that works. You send the truck out into the field, and it takes someone at each end of this connection to kind of pan the thing in and dial it in. And a lot of hands-on to make that happen. There's a certain amount of risk with the mast. It's the way we've been doing it. It's certainly, the most limiting thing is it just sends video and audio from one place to another. Quite simply, it's a one-directional connection. What we're headed for with our updated IP-ENG is to replace the steerables with sector panels. So you can see on the right-hand side a sector panel. They look very much like the panels you're familiar seeing from the cell networks. They are lower maintenance. There's no moving parts. We can also do low-profile antennas on the vehicles themselves, as you see in that far right panel. So there's no need to raise an antenna on a mast. Certainly when you go out beyond 30 miles, from 30 to 70 miles, you'll get big benefit from putting a mast up and doing the aiming portion of it. But for closer in work on a Sprinter vehicle, etc., you can just use a little portable, electronically steerable on the roof of a car. You see the panels are arrayed in quadrature to one another in 90-degree orientation, and that's how we cover 360 degrees with those. So in the legacy COFDM world, you do one news story at a time. You need the 2 people, one in the truck, one at the studio end, to dial it in. If you need to do IFB, you're going to do it on a cell phone or something like that. There's no return path. You feed real time via microwave, one camera and one truck at a time to go live. There are, in this drawing we show you, there's some newsroom assets over on the studio side there, but the reason we show them is because you can't get to them. That's the point of this slide. So they're unavailable to you from the truck. But what's over there? The newsroom control system, the switcher, library material, the rundown, the prompter, tally control, VoIP. It's all inaccessible to you from the truck currently. So what we want to achieve, and in this drawing you'll see there's little dashed lines, that is our very high-tech way of conveying that now we're doing bidirectional communications via IP. But what we want to do is make it so not only a single truck, but multiple trucks can hit a single sector antenna at once. Each of those trucks can have multiple camera feeds. Each of those trucks can have multiple video feeds in multiple directions. We can do FTP transfers. We can have all of the studio systems available interactively from within the production vehicle. So that's what we're looking for. We have, because it's a panel antenna and a steerable, either a low profile that requires no physical steering, or an antenna on a tower on the truck that is steered via an app, right, where you just tell it the name of the receive site that you want to go to. And since they both have GPS built into them, they automatically find one another. So it's just pushing a button on an app today. So we're trying to make it as easy to use as bonded cellular is. Push one button. Maybe it's more than one button, but not too many more than one button in order to achieve the same conditions. So yeah, the MAM system, the rundown, IFB, talkback, all of those things become available to you now from the truck. You could, for instance, deploy the producer for the show in an important breaking news story that's going to be days long. You could send the producer now to the truck, and they could run the entire show from the truck, right? So they can actually be in the field and see what's happening and be close to the story. You no longer have to do everything remotely. Prompter is a good example of things. You can have the prompter operator back in the studio. Actually, any asset could be put in either end of this transaction interactively, depending on the circumstances. So again, COFDM, the old style, one truck at a time. With the new style on the right, it's kind of like a similar interface you would expect to see with your cellular news gathering, where you have as many feeds as happen to be coming in from as many trucks and helicopters simultaneously. We have servers that will ingest 8 or 16 simultaneous feeds from the field. Here we compare the number of steps it takes to set up a COFDM ENG shot. The old way, 22 steps, the new way, half as many. So certainly that's a big time saving. We've done a lot of study of the level of effort required from each of the personnel involved in a live shot in news gathering, and you can see in the chart here that it really is about half the amount of work. Each of the people in each of the roles has far less on their plate to make this possible. So again, in order to compete better with cellular. So what are those studio systems once again? There is certainly asset management, all the servers that are inside the studio. You can now interactively access the newsroom computer system itself, automation, any video shared as return video from any return source, intercoms and IFBs, live graphics, live weather, interactive weather. If you have a weather computer, you now have a display on the side of the truck and have a stand upright on the side of the truck and interact with the map, that sort of thing. Prompting, which we showed at NEB with QScript interactively between the two booths over Newsnet. Newsnet, by the way, in the middle there is the product name for the productized product that we have developed around this technology. Phones, as we mentioned. Proxy editing, where you work a proxy workflow and then do automated conform to full res, that sort of thing. And a generic data pipe. On the outdoor unit on the mast, we're able to put a Wi-Fi hotspot and give you an umbrella, so to speak, of Wi-Fi that covers for 100 feet or so around the truck. So just for things like browsing and posting to social media and things like that, all capable from the vehicle now with a live IP connection. It's essentially a wireless Ethernet connection, if you really want to think of it that way. So just a bit about managing bandwidth. I don't want to give you the impression that, since the last thing I said was that it's like an Ethernet connection, it is actually much more sophisticated than that. So the first question is, why would you have to manage bandwidth? What is the impetus for that? In this example, we have 4 remote units, and each is using, well, let's see, each sector supports 40 megabits. If you divide that in 2, half up, half down transmission, you've got about a 40 megabit capacity for a receive site sector, right? 4 of them for 4, but they're all separate. You're hitting only one at a time with the asset in the field, right? So if 3 trucks were connected to one of those, and you were trying to do a 10 megabit stream up, let's say, to each of the from each of those trucks to that one panel, you'd be oversubscribing by about 10 megabits, right? So the idea here is that what you don't want to do is do full bandwidth feeds all the time. If you've got 6 feeds going to a receive antenna, you want one of them to be in full bandwidth and 5 of them to be in proxy mode. So the way we manage that is to either push a button and say, let this one be the full bandwidth at this moment, or we can semi-manage it and have like the tally, for instance, have it follow tally in the switcher and switch according to that. But we found that much more interesting is to integrate either via MOS with the newsroom computer system or with the actual newsroom automation system. And that way we have an idea of what's coming next, and we can get into full bandwidth mode from proxy at the right moment in time, just-in-time delivery. And that way you could have something like a dozen camera feeds showing up in the production control room, only one of which is for air and at full bandwidth, and all the other ones simply visible, so that you know you can take that next, right? That plus I should mention that the encoder that we put in these trucks, the Newsstream encoder, which Newsnet is based on, will sort of dynamically adjust the data rates coming out of the codec that is encoding the SDI video from the cameras, and also the constellation of the radio. Excuse me, what is the right word here? The actual bandwidth constellation, you know. So and also power. Right, those 3 things are interactively and dynamically being adjusted. So it's much more sophisticated than just a clean IP pipe where you would have to manually adjust all those things. It's looking at the overall context of what you're trying to do. It might say, for instance, well, at this day part, you're trying to do an FTP transfer, and it might give the time slicing and the time domain multiplexing environment. It might give the emphasis to upload or to download or that sort of thing, depending on what contextually you're trying to accomplish. So here is a diagram of a couple of assets, a helicopter, an ENG truck, and a SAT truck, all connected to a studio via Newsnet. And you can see that essentially everything happening in the studio is now accessible from these assets. So, in a helicopter, for instance, they typically use the aircraft's own comm system to communicate back and forth with the studio. We've found that with Newsnet, you can get much greater distances. We're getting comms now over Newsnet at distances up to about 70 miles. So again, this is just a quick look at what the integration looks like. We've most recently done an integration with AP's EMPS, and essentially as the rundown runs down, we have a selection of shots, and one will be in full broadcast bandwidth, and the other is in proxy, and as you get to the appropriate place in the rundown, it will make the switch automatically. Also, security is a big issue here, so we work with all of the sort of available methods of security so that this asset that's out in the field does not become a risk to your network. That truck is now essentially inside the firewall. Right. So that's the presentation. We can talk more about it.
So that does use the BAS 2 gigahertz, right?
Absolutely.
And then your central receive becomes a bidirectional. It's no longer a receive site. It's a transceiver.
It's a transceiver, exactly, and you need a bidirectional backhaul as well. So that can be either microwave or fiber or terrestrial open internet, but you need a bidirectional connection.
To get it back to your studio.
And that's right. Right, assuming the receive site is not co-located with the studio.
Gotcha. And then you said that it's adjusting the power. Is that similar like cell phones? It only uses, 50 milliwatts if it's within the range, so it's not putting 10 watts out of the truck. It's backing it down just to get the full quiet, right?
Right, that's exactly right. So our maximum power is 10 watts, and we're not going to use 10 watts if we're in close proximity to the receive site, right?
They just, through the telemetry, they just automatically...
Right, since it's bidirectional, it's got handshake, and it can do flow control, right?
Now, do you use DeGero or LiveView or TVU for encoders, or is this all your own? Because I thought I saw that DeGero was partnered up with somebody. Are they partnered with you or not?
They are not. I think DeGero's partnership was around satellite transmission. They were doing satellite as a second path, yeah, KA, I believe. What we do is strictly over microwave band, but we can include as a second path, as a diversity path, a cellular connection. So we can, in the outdoor units for this that go on the mast, we have 4 slots for cellular modems.
And this works well if you want to do a weather shot when you're moving, you're driving?
Yeah, moving, it works pretty darn well. Yeah, COFDM is famous for being, reliable in a moving vehicle. Yeah. Yeah, certainly it works from the helicopter. I guess that's the answer. Yeah.
Do you need like 2 channels, or is there just 1 channel per thing?
So we'll use whatever bandwidth you have. So typical is a half channel, but if you have 2 channels, 2 full channels, we'll just mash it all together, and you'll double. If we get 20 megabits per sector site out of a single sector in a half channel, if you double it, you'll get 40 and so forth. So you can get quite a bit of bandwidth if you have channels available. I don't know that they have to be adjacent. I'm not prepared to answer that one, but I don't think they do. Yeah.
This wouldn't work by chance on a radio RPU. They use like 450 meg. You probably haven't gone there at all.
Yeah, no, all the modulation is based on 2 gigahertz at this point. I mean, the challenge here was not to accomplish bidirectional IP news gathering in any band. The challenge was to do it in BAS. Yeah, there's 1,000 ways you can skin this cat in a different band, right? Right. But we've got 2 gigahertz, God-given. Right.
So what's the codec?
Yeah, so it's currently MPEG-4. We'll swap that out for HEVC at some point fairly soon. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, so to upgrade, the question is it compatible with current radio? So the new stream device, the encoder that goes inside the truck, the IDU, actually is switchable between DVB-T and Newsnet, so you can switch from one to another on the truck side. On the receive site side, you either have 2 sets of receive gear, or you can make that switchable, which is a fairly big hoop to jump through, but it's possible. We did that for a customer in Boston as they were rolling it out. As they were one truck at a time, sort of rolling out the system, we made it switchable, so any of the trucks could go live. But eventually they'll all be on Newsnet, and we won't have to do that. When you do the upgrade, you need the latest IDU, the news stream, and then we will replace the feed horn on your masted antenna. And then, of course, the receive antennas get replaced, and then there was a server that does the aggregation of all the incoming data on the studio side. So those are the items.
How many markets are you in right now?
Yeah, so the honest answer is we're really in Boston, yeah, where we're doing work for one station in Boston. I don't have permission to talk about who they are. It's not a secret. I think some folks know, but I can't talk about it here in this public venue. But that said, it's been about 3 years that it's been rolling out to this one site, and it's up and running there. We have another station in Houston where we have a sort of an experimental demonstration system set up, and they've got a couple of trucks running, and we're actually using the low-profile antennas on the trucks there. So that's pretty much that. We'd like to see more at this point, and feel free to come up here and sign up.
A lease model at all, or just
Yeah, we're working with all of the above in terms of, again, we're not going to talk about business and commercial things here in this environment. We've been asked not to, but yeah, we're looking at all the different ways to provide this gear. Yeah, we can talk about that afterward.
generate $1,500, $2,000 a month in the budget versus a CapEx of $100K?
Yeah, what I can say is we've looked at doing provision of like the receive site, for instance, for a municipality or DMA, and let the broadcasters basically do a shared tenancy model, that sort of thing. So you own your trucks, but there's a shared receive site or multiple shared receive sites where we would actually take on the cost of operating that and the cost of the backhauls. Good idea, though.
Looks like it's the wave of the future.
Yeah, it is, and the competitive pressure comes from cellular news gathering, and again, nothing bad to say about cellular news gathering, except that the obvious. You don't control that. You've got the transmitter in one place and the receiver in the other, and God knows what in between. You have no control over that. It's a third party. It's just not. And I think broadcasters who are doing mission critical work or working in hurricanes and so forth like to know that they have control over that. So what I say is you risk missing the biggest story of your life. Right? You'll get all the other ones, but not that big one where you have to sit on that story for 5 straight days and broadcast 24/7. The packs aren't necessarily developed for that kind of duty cycle.
Any other questions?
Well, thank you. I'll be here if you want to chat further. Thanks for coming.
Thank you, Jeff.
Appreciate it.
Now we want to thank Jeff for his presentation. This year, for a first, all the sessions are being audio recorded, as well as the slides. Everything will be on the OAB website in the next couple weeks. Next, we'll have a short break and then reconvene for the closing session in room 281-82, right behind us in the room we started in earlier. Remember to get your cards in for the afternoon door prize drawing, and you, of course, must be next door eligible to win. So that will all convene again at, I think it's 3:30.